Hello and welcome to the Beniverse, and my name is Ben Friedman, and boy am I excited to talk about this movie today that I am talking about. It is Glass Onion, a Knives Out story. If you don't know, I love the first Knives Out movie. I think it is excellent. It is my probably, if not my favorite film of 2019, because that would be Jojo Rabbit. That was my second favorite film of that year. I loved it. I thought it was spectacular. I think Rian Johnson's an incredibly gifted, talented director and writer, and I was so excited to jump back into this world. And this film did not disappoint me. Just spoiler alert right now, this movie did not disappoint me. For this review, I love this movie. And I'm going to just talk about some of the aspects of this movie that I loved. I should just note one thing. I think there's been people who have been close to spoiling this film in their reviews, basically saying, this actor gives a great performance, or this person's so great in the second half of this film, or this person really comes to shine, or this person does this, or this person doesn't get to do a lot. I think saying any of that is actually kind of a spoiler for a murder mystery. If I'm saying so-and-so doesn't get to do a lot, it's probably easy to guess this person might die or isn't really in the movie. That's unfair. I think that's unfun. So I'm not going to really get to say anything besides that. Besides the fact that Daniel Craig is once again excellent as Detective Blanc. He is so funny in this movie. This movie is definitely much more comedic than the first Knives Out, and I think that's for the benefit of this movie. I thought this movie was tremendously funny. There was like 5 scenes in here that are laugh out loud, especially as they revolve around some of the stupidity of other characters. Kate Hudson, I will just say, is very funny in this movie. I think she is the comedic standout in this movie through and through. She is excellent in this movie, as is the rest of the cast. Overall, this cast is really talented. There are 1 or 2 actors who I think doesn't get to do as much as some of the other actors in this movie. That's just due to the ensemble of it and the ensemble nature of this movie. You don't get to do as much as everybody else, but ultimately it really worked for me. What I will say about Glass Onion is the story is significantly messier than the first Knives Out movie. I think the story is in and out, good and bad at times. I think it is very overly ambitious, and I think with that also, it can be very messy at times. I don't want to go into great detail about this movie because I think the trailers actually did a great job of hiding a lot of the scale of this movie, which I just will say is really good, and Rian Johnson just has such an eye for detail. I thought this film might have a struggle of just being too quirky or too eccentric or just too much in the know of what Rian Johnson wants to do. Just so much little details and lavishes and all of that it just feels overly built out and overly explored, and it's too much of a playhouse and it's too much in his wheelhouse that ultimately the world doesn't feel weird. Ultimately, that's kind of a thing with this movie. Like, the world itself does kind of almost feel like a parody of our world, and there is definitely stuff with some of these characters where they feel more like characterizations of people that we know, not characters themselves. It worked for me largely because of the tone that I think the comedy and mystery pulled off very well in this movie. And yes, does this film get very elaborate? It does so very fast. This film is very elaborate in its set design. But it worked for me really well. I thought every shot of this film was really interesting to look at. Rian Johnson has such a unique eye for direction, and everything has its purpose, meaning, detail. It's one of those movies that the more you watch it, the more you're going to pick up, and that's always a rewarding film for me to watch. Like I said, Daniel Craig is excellent in this role. He gets to just bring so much fun to this. This is basically my best way to describe Glass Onion, is this is a movie that I would like to see a movie of this caliber made every few years, where we just get a different cast, we get this type of characters. This is a series that I could just see continuing on and on. And if this is the quality that they're able to put out these movies, it really works for me. Like I said, the plot of this movie is a little messy. The movie takes a bit to get going, where you're just with a lot of these characters, you're getting their backstories, and it just goes on and on. And at 2 hours and 20 minutes, you do start to feel the length of the movie. It never bothered me because I was so enraptured in this movie, but you ultimately do feel it. And I think for some, that's going to be a turn-off. I totally understand people who are going to say that. What I will say about this film is thematically rich. I thought the story of this film was significantly more satisfying than I found the story of Knives Out. That's not to say that the overall plot of the movie is better, But what this film is conveying, about wealth inequality, the luxuries of the rich, all of that, class division, all of that. I found this movie to just work for me on an excellent level. And I just had such a blast watching it. And everything that is explored, it worked for me in such a meaningful way that I really like this film, and I just have to sing this film's praises. Is this film a worthwhile sequel to a film that I loved and a great follow-up? I would say that, and there's so much I can recommend with this. There's so many great performances. There's a lot of fun to be had. And what I love that Netflix did do, they gave Rian Johnson a huge budget to make the film that he wanted to make. No expense is spared for this film. This truly feels like a huge step up in production quality over the first film. You just feel the scale, the scope of this movie significantly better. There's a lot more flourishes, and it really all works for me in a pretty meaningful way. And I had a ton of fun with this movie, and I can highly recommend Glass Onion, A Knives Out Story. Go check it out. It's one of my favorite films of this year so far. I'm giving a 3.5 out of 4 stars for Glass Onion, A Knives Out Story. Let me know what you think. If you saw Glass Onion this weekend when it was in theaters, let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy this, or are you waiting to see this movie on Netflix? If you do get the chance, I highly recommend seeing this movie in theaters. I think it plays so much better. I think the scale of this film is beautiful. I think the cinematography, the laughs, I think it's just such a great communal experience, and it's a lot of fun to have in a theater. So I would encourage you, if you can, see this movie while it's still in theaters. If not, it's going to be a fun film for Netflix, and I think this was a good idea for Netflix to buy films like this. I wish this did get a longer theatrical run. I would want to see this movie multiple times in theaters like I did Knives Out, but I can't blame Netflix. This was a good buy. They did a really good job with this movie, and honestly, this might be the best movie that Netflix has made ever. So that's a huge praise for me. Thank you so much for watching my review of Glass Onion. If you like this review, remember to like and subscribe to the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman, here from the Beniverse. Take care. Bye-bye.